The moment the court seal was plastered onto the door, I smelled paper burning. The odor came from my office. In her panic, Xiao Zhou from accounting had knocked over her coffee cup, spilling liquid across the freshly printed asset freeze list. She tried to blot it with a tissue, but the shredder had jammed, its motor overheating, and the acrid smell wafted from that $2,000 imported machine that I stood at the office door, watching the chaos unfold, and suddenly found it funny. A $2,000 shredder, now choking on a single sheet of paper, just like me, 32 years old, 7 years building an AI algorithms company from scratch, now swallowing nothing. Mr. Chung, the court officers are still downstairs waiting to hand over the servers. Chen Mo stood behind me, his voice low. He'd been my first engineer hire in the company's third year. Thin as a rail, perpetually messy hair. Now his eyes were red-rimmed. Is there really no way out? What about Mr. Fong? Fong Huai's trapped himself. I said it with a calm that didn't feel like my own. The 30 million he put in. Right now it's probably worth about as much as that pot hose on my desk. That wasn't an exaggeration. The pot hose was bought the first year Lin Wei and I got married. We'd had it for 6 years. Its vines crawling across the entire bookshelf wall. On countless late nights, I'd look up from my work and see it tougher than I ever was. Now it, too, was part of the liquidated assets. I glanced at my watch. 5:47 p.m. Lin Wei had sent a WeChat message half an hour ago. I'm at home. There's something you need to sign. She didn't ask about the court. Didn't ask about the company. Didn't even ask if I was okay. She just said, there's something you need to sign. Lin Wei and I had been married 6 years. I knew her too well. She never fought an unprepared battle. If she said there was something to sign, then that document was already printed, lying on the dining table where we'd shared 5 years of meals. Next to it would be a glass of warm water, because she knew I didn't drink cold. She'd always known. Mr. Chung, Chen Mo opened his mouth. Go. I said, before they seal the employee exit, your severance pay won't come through this month. I owe you. I don't care about that. Chen Mo's voice suddenly rose, drawing glances from others in the hallway. He dropped it back down. Cheng Yi, listen to me. I backed up a copy of the server data. It's hidden. Don't. I cut him off, reaching out to pat his shoulder. His hand was shaking. Chen Mo, listen. Delete the backup. Clean. Leave the rest to me. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't bear to see. Trust or blind faith. I didn't know if I still deserved that look. 6 years ago, when I first started the company, he'd looked at me the same way. Back then, my company had just 3 people. I'd pitched to investors in a rented room near the university, selling the dream of China's best recommendation algorithm, of making every ordinary person seen by the world. Lin Wei had sat beside me, holding my hand, her eyes matching Chen Mo's exactly. Go. I repeated. Chen Mo gritted his teeth and turned away. His back looked like a bamboo pole bent by the wind. At the office door, he paused for a moment, not looking back. Footsteps echoed from the end of the hall. The court officers were coming up. I sat in my office for a while. The court staff knocked politely 3 times. Mr. Chung, we need to inventory and seal your company's assets. Fine. Go ahead. They walked in with clipboards and seals, recording server serial numbers one by one. I leaned against the window, looking down at the parking lot. 2 police cars and a white van sat below. Uniformed officers were loading equipment into the van. A crowd had gathered. People held up their phones, filming. Tomorrow's tech headlines would probably read, Star AI startup collapses. Founder Cheng Yi suspected of fleeing with funds. They loved the word suspected. It dodged responsibility while driving clicks. My phone buzzed. A second message from Lin Wei. How much longer? The lawyer is waiting. The lawyer is waiting. She'd even hired the lawyer already. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed, reflecting my own face. 3 days of stubble. Dark circles under my eyes. The corner of my mouth pulled into a smile I barely recognized. I didn't know what I was laughing at. I typed back 3 words. Coming home now. When the court officers reached my desk, I picked up the photo frame. On it, a wedding picture of Lin Wei and me at a Rye Lake. She stood in the wind in a white dress, looking back at me, smiling like the whole sky was hers. Mr. Chung, this photo frame falls under personal item. I said. The frame was a gift from my mother. The photo I printed myself, not company property. He glanced at it, said nothing, and checked a box on his list. I tucked the frame into my coat pocket and walked out of the office. The pot hose remained on the bookshelf. On the subway home, I scrolled through my unread messages. The investor group chat had exploded. Someone had posted photos of the court seizure. People were tagging me, asking what was happening. Someone wrote, I knew Lu Yuanhang was trouble. But nobody listened to me. I didn't reply to any of them. I scrolled up through my chat history with Lin Wei. Half a year of messages reduced to, coming home for dinner tonight. No. Okay. Further up. Her birthday. When I'd sent a voice message saying, Happy birthday, babe. And she'd replied, Thanks. Further up. Last Lunar New Year. When I'd transferred her a red envelope and she'd texted, Happy New Year. Honey, back then, I thought we'd just entered the dull phase of marriage. I thought all couples went through it. From mad passion to silence. From silence to habit. I didn't want to admit, or perhaps I refused to believe, that she'd been ready to leave for a long time. She'd just been waiting for the right moment. Waiting for me to fully collapse. So she could walk away cleanly with everything. Without a trace of guilt. That MY apartment complex was called Emerald Bay. Sounded expensive, but it was just an average mid-high-end development on the South 3rd Ring Road. 6 years ago, Lin Wei and I had put down a down payment and taken out a mortgage. We thought the future held everything. More money. Better days. I walked out of the subway station and past the convenience store at the complex entrance. The owner's wife poked her head out, looked at me, and hesitated. I nodded at her. She quickly averted her gaze. News traveled faster than I'd thought. I in the elevator. The mirrored stainless steel reflected my face. I zipped my jacket up to cover the yellowed collar of my shirt. 3 years ago, Lin Wei had picked it out at the mall. She'd said the color made me look sharp. I hadn't worn anything else since. The elevator opened on the 12th floor. The hallway smelled of cooking. The retired couple across the hall were making dinner. In front of my door sat a pair of unfamiliar men's leather shoes. I stood there, staring at them for 3 full seconds. Brown, handmade leather soles, polished to a shine. The kind of brand I used to wear in my early startup days. My own shoe cabinet didn't hold a single pair anymore. I took a breath and unlocked the door with my fingerprint. Lin Wei was sitting on the couch. Beside her, a middle-aged man in a suit. On the dining table lay a document, and next to it, a glass of water. Still warm. She wore a camel-colored knit cardigan, her hair pinned up, showing the thin gold chain around her neck. I'd given it to her on our 2nd anniversary. I noticed she still wore it, and I didn't know whether to feel comforted or mocked at your back. She stood up, her eyes scanning me. Her brow flickered with a faint frown. A gesture I knew too well. She found me embarrassing. Beneath her standards in front of others. Yeah? I changed into slippers and walked to the dining table. I picked up the document and flipped through it. Divorce agreement. The property division was detailed. The house went to her. Because, as her lawyer argued, the mortgage had been primarily serviced by her income. In fact, for 6 years, my company had been sending money home. But the company was an LLC, and the money ran through her personal account. On paper, she'd made the payments. The car went to her. The white Camry we'd bought 6 years ago. Worth maybe 5,000 used. The savings went to her. The joint account was in her name. The company debt was mine. The clause read, whereas Mr. Chung Yi, due to mismanagement of his company, shall bear all debts personally. Ms. Lin Wei bears no joint liability. Last. Child support. There were no children. So it was blank. I finished reading the 6 pages slowly. Every page bore her signature at the bottom. Neat and sharp. The lawyer handed me a black pen. Mr. Chung, if you have no objections, can I ask one question? I said, setting the document down and looking at Lin Wei. She met my gaze. Completely composed. Composed in a way that felt foreign. Go ahead. When did you decide? 3 months ago. Her voice was flat as a lake. The first time you told me the company's cash flow was about to break. I consulted a lawyer and started sorting the joint assets. 3 months ago. I repeated it. 3 months ago. What did you say to me? You said, babe, it'll be okay. We'll figure it out together. Lin Wei's expression flickered only for an instant. Then the elegant composure was back. Chung Yi, I don't want to fight. You know your situation. The court froze your accounts. You can't even pay next month's mortgage. If I stay, I'll be dragged down with you. Have you considered how I feel? How you feel? My throat suddenly felt raw. Lin Wei, we've been married 6 years. 6 years ago. You said 6 years ago is 6 years ago. She cut me off. Speaking faster now. Chung Yi, I don't owe you anything. These 6 years, I haven't exactly lived the high life. You worked all the time, and every dollar the company made was reinvested. The house is on the South 3rd Ring. The car is 6 years old. Your friends all drive Porsches. Did I ever complain? You said you wanted to start a business. Fine. I supported you. You said your project got stolen. Fine. I comforted you. Now you have nothing. What do you expect me to do? Move into a basement with you and eat instant noodles? The last sentence came with a faint, cold smile. I don't have that kind of luck. I looked at her. On the coffee table, her phone screen lit up with a WhatsApp notification. The sender was saved as Yuan Hang. The preview read, "Babe, let me know once the agreement is signed. I. Yuan Hang. Lu Yuan Hang. I felt the air leave the room. Lu Yuan Hang was my college roommate. The brother I'd brought in as a partner in the 4th year of the company. He handled business and fundraising. I handled tech and product. 6 months ago, when the company was at its lowest, he'd offered to reach out to an overseas investment firm that was supposedly ready to put in $200 million in strategic funding. I'd been uneasy because the firm's background was murky, but Lu Yuanhang had convinced me. Yezi, trust me. I worked hard to get this connection. I trusted him. Then the firm pulled out at the last minute during due diligence, citing a patent dispute over the core algorithm. Patent dispute. Those algorithms were 3 years of the team's work, patented under our company name. But their lawyers produced technical comparison reports showing our core modules overlapped heavily with a foreign company's patents. That company was registered in the Cayman Islands. The legal representative field showed an anglicized Chinese name that I hadn't thought much of it then. Now that message sat on Lin Wei's phone screen. I'll sign, I said. I picked up the pen and signed my name on every page. My handwriting was crooked. My hand was shaking. But I kept it under control, not letting the ink blot. After the last page, I set the pen down. The house, the car, the savings. All yours. I'll take the debt. One last question. Lin Wei put the agreement away, handed it to the lawyer, and looked up. Go ahead. How long have you and Lu Yuanhang been together? 3 seconds of silence. Lin Wei's expression didn't change, but her fingers, hanging at her sides, curled slightly. Does it matter? Yes, she sighed, like she was humoring an unreasonable child. 8 months. The time you said you were going to Shenzhen for a business trip. That night, I had Yuanhang over for dinner. Actually, no, it started before that. But, she looked at me. You never noticed things like that. Chengyi, your eyes were always on your code and your company. When did you ever really see me? I opened my mouth. No words came. She was right. 8 months ago, I had gone to Shenzhen for a client. Spent the night revising 3 versions of a proposal. When I came back, I brought her egg tarts from the airport. She said thank you, then went to her room. I thought she was just tired. I thought we had all the time in the world. That it's all handled. The lawyer stood, putting the divorce agreement into his briefcase. He nodded at Lin Wei. Ms. Lin, I'll follow up on the legal procedures. Good. Lin Wei walked him to the door, then turned back to me. When are you moving out? Tonight. Fine. Your things are already packed. I in the study. In that suitcase. I walked into the study. A black suitcase stood beside the bookshelf, half open, filled with a few changes of clothes, a razor, a charger, and a dog-eared copy of Introduction to Algorithms. On the top shelf, our wedding photo had been taken down. Along with every other trace of me, all packed into this suitcase. I bent to zip it. I noticed a folded piece of paper at the bottom. I opened it. It was the Arai Lake wedding photo. The one I'd put in my coat pocket. She'd taken it out at some point and placed it in the suitcase. On the back, in her handwriting, the ink long dry. Chengyi, I hope everything goes well for you from now on. Lin Wei. I folded it back and put it in my pocket, next to the frame. When I dragged the suitcase into the living room, Lin Wei stood at the entryway, back to me, on her phone. Her shoulder was tilted slightly. I caught a glimpse of her screen. She was on a call with Lu Yuanhang. Her voice soft, but audible. Signed. It's done. Don't worry. He doesn't know anything. Okay. See you tonight. I pulled open the front door. The smell of cooking still lingered in the hallway. The TV from the retired couple's apartment murmured through the crack. The elevator numbers climbed from the first floor. Ding. The doors opened. I stepped in and pressed the lobby button. As the elevator descended, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. Then a second buzz. A third. I pulled it out. An unknown number. No signature. Mr. Chung. Wondering where your core algorithm went. Yuan Guang Technologies product launch is next month. You're welcome to attend. Also, don't forget to check your wife's bank statements. I stared at the message. The elevator arrived. The lobby lights were dim. The suitcase wheels rumbled across the floor. I stepped out of the building, standing in the night wind. The words on the screen burned. Lin Wei's bank statements. I'd never checked them. I shoved the phone back in my pocket, dragged the suitcase toward the gate, passing the convenience store. The owner's wife poked her head out again. This time, she didn't look away. Xiao Cheng, Are you okay? I turned and smiled. I'm fine. Just a business trip. She looked at me, looked at the suitcase, and said nothing. She nodded. Outside Emerald Bay. I hailed a taxi. The driver asked where to. Head south. Any cheap hotel in the old neighborhood will do. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror, didn't ask, and stepped on the gas. The car climbed onto the South 3rd Ring elevated highway. City lights streamed past the window. My phone buzzed again. An email. Sender. Chun Mo subject. One word. Hidden. I opened it. An encrypted attachment. The body read, Mr. Chung. I didn't delete it. The password is your daughter's name. I didn't have a daughter. The password was my mother's name. I typed it in. The archive opened. Inside were 12 folders, screenshots, and audio files dating from last March through last week. I tapped one audio file. It played through my Bluetooth earbuds. The first voice was Lu Yuan Hong's. Lin Wei. Listen, copy that code, and my team can rebuild it in a month. The new entity won't have Chung Ye's name on it. The patents will belong to us. The second voice was Lin Wei's. Familiar and utterly foreign. When he went on his trip, I got into his computer. I plugged in the drive you gave me, but his encryption tripped an alarm. I only got about 70%. Outside the window, the city lights blurred into a single line. I pulled out the earbuds, put the phone face down on my knee, and closed my eyes. The radio was playing an old song. The lyrics went, even if the whole world leaves you, there's still one of me to stay. I listened, and suddenly laughed out loud. Hard enough that the driver shot a horrified look at me in the rear view. When the laughter stopped, my cheeks were wet. The taxi continued south, into a neighborhood with sparse streetlights. I knew ahead was the old urban village. $300 a month single rooms. Electric kettles that never quite boiled noodles. Neighbors shouting over drinking games at 3 a.m. This was where I was going, the place I'd start from zero. Before the screen went dark, I looked once more at the anonymous text. I opened my notes app and typed, Yuan Guang Technology. Core algorithm. Lin Wei's bank records. Then I turned off the phone. Outside, the city's CBD glittered in the distance. Somewhere in those towers was my old office, now sealed with court tape. The pot hose had probably been hauled away. That pot hose I remembered now. It was a gift from Lin Wei's colleagues the year we got married. She'd been working at a small ad agency. They'd said pot hose was easy to keep alive. She'd probably never imagined that one day I'd become just like it. Nurtured, then discarded, but that was fine. The night wind from the urban village poured through the open window. I zipped up my jacket and curled into the seat. It was fine. I'd come back to life. When that day came, I wanted her to remember this night, remember how she'd signed that paper, laughed with another man about how I knew nothing, and pushed me out the door with nothing. I wanted her to remember it whole, clear, every single word. The taxi turned into a narrow alley, splashing through a puddle. Here, the driver said. $38. I paid, dragged my suitcase out, and stood at a street corner where half the lamps were broken. A dog barked in the distance. The smell of stir-fried chili drifted from somewhere, making my eyes sting. I wiped the corner of my eye and walked into the alley. First night. The urban village. Everything starts here. Yuan Guang Technology's product launch, according to that anonymous text, was 45 days away. 45 days was enough for a dead man to do a lot of things. I pushed open the glass door of a small hotel. The owner's wife didn't look up. Staying. Hourly rate. 20. Monthly rate. She finally glanced at me. $350. Utilities extra. 1 month's deposit. I fished the last $2,000 in cash from the suitcase's hidden compartment, counted out $700, and placed it on the counter. She took it and tossed me a key. Metal, with a faded room number sticker. 302. I carried my suitcase upstairs. The stairs were narrow and steep, each step creaking. From the second floor came a baby's crying, mixed with the static hiss of a TV. A low, distant rumble, like something huge collapsing far away. I twisted the key to 302. A wave of dampness hit me. A tiny room. One bed. One table. One chair. The window faced a wall, its base carpeted with moss. I set the suitcase against the wall and sat on the bed. The springs groaned. Then I took out my phone, turned it on, and opened Chen Mo's archive. I started from the first file, working my way through. The city glowed in the distance like a giant glass dome over everyone's secrets. And I sat in the dark, piecing my shattered world back together. The first fragment read, Lu Yuan Hang. The second, Lin Wei. The third, Yuan Guang Technology. More pieces came, and as I fit them together, I saw my own name at the center. Cheng Yi, founder. Bankrupt. husband, ex-husband, and one more word that hidden beneath all the pieces, waiting to be uncovered. That word was revenge. Outside, the sky was lightning. The sound of a street sweeper's broom scraped the pavement one stroke at a time. Through the quietest hour before dawn, I closed the laptop and leaned against the headboard. Closing my eyes. 45 days. At the end of Chun Mo's data package was an invitation screenshot for Yuan Guang Technologies product launch. Date, time, venue, and the guest list. On the fourth line, Lin Wei. Title, Director of Marketing, Yuan Guang Technology. Next to it, a photo of Lu Yuanhang with his arm around her waist. The background, a tropical sunset, at 4:50 a.m. In that single room in the urban village. I stared at that photo. I remembered her looking back at me on the shore of Arai Lake, smiling. That smile in the picture. It was the same one. Only I'd been blind before. Now my eyes were open. Morning came earlier in the urban village than anywhere else. Before 6, the alley below was already alive. Food carts rattled over the concrete. The hiss of frying dough mixed with the looped recordings of hawkers. Baozi, mantu, soy milk. The man in the next room coughed like his lungs were coming up. A woman yelled something sharp. Then came the slap of slippers on the floor. I lay still, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. It looked like a face vaguely wrinkled, its expression almost pitying. I'd slept less than 3 hours. Chun Mo's archive had 47 files. I'd gone through them twice. The recordings of Lu Yuanhang and Lin Wei were more explicit than I'd imagined. They hadn't just stolen my algorithm, but they'd also run a fake bridge financing round through that Cayman shell company, using the investment as collateral to borrow more from the bank, then poured it into their new entity, Yuan Guang Technology. It was a meticulously woven net. I was just the fish slowly strangled at its center. Lin W.E.I.M.Y. wife had been on the weaver's side for 8 months. She'd traded the encrypted algorithms from my computer for an 8% stake in Yuan Guang Technology and the director of marketing position. What kept me awake most was the bank statement screenshot. A China merchant's bank card in Lin Wei's name, with regular deposits starting last September, each labeled consulting fee, ranging from 5 to 20,000. The sender, a company called Ruation Consulting. A quick search on the company registry showed its legal representative was Lu Xueming. And Lu Xueming was Lu Yuanhang's college roommate. We'd all had dinner together once. 4 of us. Me, Lu Yuanhang, Lin Wei, and Lu Xueming. Lu Yuanhang raised his glass and said, "Yezi, brothers for life." Lin Wei leaned on my shoulder, laughing. Lu Xueming took a photo. Now I wondered if that photo had long since been deleted. I sat up. The bed creaked. There were no curtains in the room. The wall outside the window blocked all light. I could only see by the glow of my phone screen. The suitcase still stood against the wall. I opened it, shook out the few wrinkled clothes. A dark blue windbreaker my mother had bought me last spring festival. Tag still on, a pair of jeans, faded at the knees, a white t-shirt with a loose collar. I folded them and set them at the foot of the bed. I had $1,300 left in cash. I'd already paid $700 for the first month's rent and deposit. $600 remained. I opened my banking app. All accounts frozen. Balance 0. WeChat Pay, $83.60. Alipay, $27.20. That was everything I had. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen. Then I opened my contacts, found Chun Mo's name, and called. It rang twice before he picked up. His voice was still rough with sleep. "Mr. Chung, don't call me that anymore," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Chun Mo, can you talk?" "Yeah, yeah." His voice came fully awake. I heard bedsheets rustle. "Mr. Chung, Yi, where are you? I sent that archive last night, and you didn't reply. I thought I'm fine. I saw the archive. Thank you." I paused. "Chun Mo, one thing. When did you start collecting those recordings and screenshots?" A few seconds of silence. "The night you told me to delete the backup." "I didn't. I went home, thought about it, and it didn't sit right. I went back to the office. The court people had left by then, but the servers weren't fully sealed yet. I copied data from the backup drive during a shift change, and I found," his voice dropped, "I found a hidden partition with Lu Yuanhang's login records. He'd been accessing your server at night. Many times. I know," I said. "He admitted it in his own recordings. Ye. What are you going to do? There's enough evidence for a case. Trade secret theft, fraudulent financing, embezzlement. Any one of those could put him away." "Not yet." He paused. "What? Listen, Chen Mo Yuanguang's product launch is next month. Their core product is built on my algorithm, modified. But my algorithm. If I sue now, at best they get a fine. Maybe a slap on the wrist. They have offshore funding behind them. They'll change their name, change their shell, and keep going. I don't want that. I paused, looking at the moss-covered wall outside the window. I want them standing at the top. And then I want them to fall. In front of everyone. There was a long silence. Then Chinemo said, "Yi, I'm with you. No. Go find a real job. You're talented. You won't have trouble. I won't." His voice was hard as stone. The company's gone. The team's scattered. But I'm not done. You hired me first. You said you'd make me the best recommendation engineer in China. I remember that. I gripped the phone. My fingers numb. Outside, someone was shouting at a dog in a dialect I barely caught. Harsh and familiar. All right, I said. Then stay. But I'm telling you now, I can't pay you. Probably for a long time. And this whole thing carries risk. If they fight back, I'm not afraid. Chinemo said. Yi, tell me the first step. First, organize every login timestamp from that hidden partition. Exact to the second. IP addresses too. Second, help me trace someone. Lu Xueming, legal representative of Ruation Consulting. Map every company he's associated with. All the way up. Third, I heard keyboard clicks on the other end. I'm noting it. Third, I took a breath. Get close to Yuan Guang's current tech team. They have my core algorithm, but it's incomplete. Only 70%. The rest they have to build themselves. Lu Yuanheng can't code. He'll outsource or hire new people. Submit your resume under a different identity. Your cousin's name. Didn't he just finish his master's? Say you have an AI degree from the UK and an internship at a London startup. Yuan Guang is desperate for talent right now. Lu Yuanheng won't interview tech hires personally. Get in. Find out how they're patching the missing 30%. I heard Chen Mo inhale. You want to know where their vulnerabilities are. Once I know their vulnerabilities, I can turn them into traps. I stood, walking to the window. Through a crack in the wall, I glimpsed an auntie in a red padded jacket braiding her child's hair, roughly but deftly. After I hung up, I stood in the room for a while. A sliver of morning light slipped through the crack and traced a thin golden line across the floor. I followed it and found an old book the previous tenant had left. Its cover curled, titled Financial Statement Analysis. From beginner to pro. I picked it up, dusted it off, and found a faded supermarket receipt inside, dated 3 years earlier. A carton of milk, 2 packs of noodles, and a bunch of scallions. I tucked the book into my pocket. Downstairs, the owner's wife was cracking sunflower seeds, scrolling through trashy videos on her phone. She glanced up. Going out, yeah? At the door. I turned back. Is there like a place nearby for casual work? She spat the shells into her palm. Turn right at the end of the street. There's a labor market. But you. She sized me up, her gaze lingering on my windbreaker and faded jeans. You know how to ride a scooter for deliveries? Yeah. Then download an app. Pick up orders on your phone. She grabbed another handful of seeds. You look like you were an office guy. You can't do the labor market work. I didn't argue. I said thanks and walked out. The alley was fully awake now. A line formed at the breakfast stall. A shirtless man loaded crates of beer onto a tricycle, sweat running down his back. As I passed the crepe stall, the vendor called, "Hey, get one. $5 with egg." I pulled out $5 and handed it to her. The crepe was hot in my hand. I stood by the alley entrance and ate it. Then I downloaded the delivery app, registered, uploaded my ID, did the facial scan. 3 minutes. The system flashed. High order volume in your area. Start now. I zipped my windbreaker to the chin, unlocked a shared bike, and started my first day. Day 1. 14 hours. 22 orders. $206. My last delivery was to a 6th-floor walk-up in an old building. The customer was an elderly woman living alone, ordering a bowl of congee. When I knocked, she cracked the door, received the congee with shaking hands, and pressed a bottle of water into my palm. You worked hard. Young man.It was nothing, I said, going down. My knees were trembling. I sat on the steps outside the unit and drank the water. It was room temperature. But it burned my throat like swallowing broken glass. Back at the hotel, it was almost 1 a.m. The owner's wife was asleep at the counter, the TV still murmuring the late news. I crept upstairs, washed my face, and transferred the day's earnings to my wallet. Then I sat on the bed and opened the old finance book that I barely made it 2 pages before exhaustion hit. But I forced myself to read until 3 a.m. The company. I'd always left financials to others. I'd never truly looked at a balance sheet. Now I understood where I'd been wrong. trusting too much, believing too much in the weight of the word brother. On the third day, as I was delivering a bubble tea order, I got a call from Uncle Joe. He was the owner of a small noodle shop I discovered near the hotel. The first time I'd gone in, I ordered the cheapest plain noodles, $8. When he brought it out, he'd hidden 2 slices of beef under the noodles. Boss, I didn't order meat, I said as he wiped his hands on his apron. You're thin as a rail. Here, don't tell anyone. That had been the previous Tuesday. After that, I went to his shop for lunch every day. Sometimes plain noodles, sometimes, if he was in a good mood, a fried egg on the side. Uncle Joe was in his 60s, gray-haired, reading glasses perched on his nose. His noodle shop was tiny. 4 tables, a faded menu on the wall, most expensive item $12. But his braised beef broth was rich and fragrant. So good that the internet cafe next door had someone come for takeout every day. That afternoon, I was stopped at a red light when my phone rang. Uncle Joe's voice came through. Xiao Chum, you free tonight? Stop by the shop. I need you to look at something. Okay. After I finished my shift around 8, I parked the scooter at the alley entrance and walked in. The shop was empty. Uncle Joe sat at the back table, surrounded by brown paper bags of receipts and ledgers, a red and blue ballpoint pen in his hand. He waved me over. Come look at this. He pushed a ledger toward me. Open to a page. My eyes aren't what they used to be. You're young. Check my math for me. Will you? I sat across from him and took the ledger. It was an old-fashioned accounting book handwritten in blue-black ink. Neat and detailed. Date, summary, amount, handler, notes. Each line complete. Flipping back a few pages, I realized it wasn't the noodle shop's books. It was another organization's cash flow. Every entry tagged with Yuan Guang Project. XX expense, Yuan Guang. Yuan Guang Technology. My hand froze on the page. Uncle Joe didn't seem to notice my reaction. He sipped his tea and sighed. Last year, someone asked me to help with a set of books for a new company. I did it for 2 months. Then I felt something was off and pulled out. But I kept the drafts. Uncle Joe? My throat tightened as he set his tea down, took off his reading glasses, wiped them with his apron, and looked at me. His eyes in the dim lamplight were sharp. When I added that beef to your noodles, I thought you looked familiar. Then I saw the news and remembered who you are. He tapped the ledger with his pen. Yuan Guang's first round of financing was done with 2 sets of books. One for the investors, one for themselves. The investor version inflated expenses by 30%. In the private version, he turned the ledger toward me, pointing at one line. There's a $500,000 entry labeled Technical Service Fee. Payee, Ruation Consulting, Ruation Consulting, Lu Shueming. The source of the consulting fees flowing into Lin Wei's bank account. I stared at that figure until the ink blurred before my eyes. Uncle Joe slid a cup of tea toward me. Drink. Slowly. I lifted the cup. Jasmine tea, faintly warm. I took a sip, then set it down and looked at him. Uncle, why are you helping me? He leaned back in his chair, quiet for a while. The lamplight carved shadows into his wrinkles, making him look like a man who'd kept many secrets for many years. I spent most of my life as an accountant. I've done honest books and I've done dishonest books. 2 of the men I did dishonest books for went to prison. One died there. His voice was flat. When Yuan Guang approached me last year, I wanted to refuse, but they paid well, and my wife was sick, so I took the job. 2 months in, I checked their core tech team's background, all scraped from other companies, people they'd poached. You know where I used to work? I shook my head. The City Audit Bureau. Retired 10 years ago. He put his glasses back on. The thing I hate most in this world is people using ledgers to destroy others. The old clock in the corner ticked to 9. Outside, someone passed on a scooter, honking once, the tail lingering. I closed the ledger and said to Uncle Joe, could I borrow this to make a copy? He waved his hand. It's yours. What would I do with it? Burn it. Maybe. Uncle. Don't thank me. I'm not doing it for thanks. He stood, flour dust fluttering from his apron. Xiao Chum, you call me uncle, so I'll speak plainly. I've seen plenty of people fall from high places. 9 out of 10 never get back up. But you're not one of those 9. He paused. You're the kind who breaks and picks up the pieces. I've got an eye for people. I left the noodle shop hugging the brown paper bag. The streetlights stretched my shadow long and thin. In my room, I spread the receipts and ledgers across the bed and photographed each page with my phone, saving them to an encrypted album. 47 photos. After the last one, my phone flashed a low battery warning. I plugged it in and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the sea of paper. Somewhere beyond the moss-covered wall, a train rumbled past, muffled, Drawing near then fading. I picked up my phone and texted Chinemo. What have you found on Lu Xueming? 10 minutes later. Chinemo sent a PDF. I opened it. A corporate penetration chart for Ruation Consulting. Like an inverted tree. Lu Xueming had 7 companies. 5 domestic. 2 in the Caymans. One of the Cayman companies was called Chincy Capital, listed as an investment fund. But Chinemo had noted, this company made a large transfer last August. Payee, Yuan Guang Technology Preparation Account. Amount, $12 million. Memo, technical usage fee, $12 million. Technical usage fee. Lu Yuanhang was paying himself for stolen code. I scrolled to the last page. Chinemo had added, Yuan Guang moved the product launch date forward. 12 days earlier. Now it's in 3 weeks. Word is their investors are pushing hard to get to market before the window closes. Also, my cousin's resume went through. He got an interview invitation yesterday. 3 weeks. Almost half the time I'd planned for. I put down my phone and lay back on the bed, staring at the water-stained face on the ceiling. In the dark, it stared back at the spot at its mouth, a particularly dark patch of mold. Like an open mouth. 3 weeks. Everything I'd planned for 45 days had to be compressed into 21. But I had Uncle Joe's ledger drafts. I had Chinmo's corporate chart. I had those 47 recordings and screenshots. All of it together was enough to push them off a cliff once. But once wasn't enough. I needed to push twice. The first time, make them think they could stand. The second time, shatter them completely. I sat up, opened my notes app, and started replanning the timeline. 1 critical lead from Uncle Joe's drafts. Yuan Guang's 2 sets of books. The inflated expenses included fake orders to upstream suppliers. Their real supply chain was much smaller than their public claims. If I could cut their real supply chain during the critical pre-launch period, not completely, just make 1 or 2 core suppliers hesitate, if their production capacity would show cracks. Investors would get suspicious, and investor suspicion meant re-audits. Re-audits would expose the second set of books. And once the second set of books was exposed, the connection to Ruation Consulting and Chincy Capital would come to light. Then the source of those consulting fees in Lin Wei's bank account would no longer need to be hidden behind the word consulting. I typed 3 names into my notes. Uncle Joe. Supply chain intel, Chinemo. Tech vulnerability mapping, Lin Wei. Face-to-face. After writing the 3rd name, I deleted it, then typed it again, then deleted it. In the end, I left it blank. After I finished mapping those 3 lines, my phone had charged to 60%. I unplugged it, walked to the window, and peered through the crack. Across the alley, the barber shop was still lit. The barber in his floral shirt was shaving a middle-aged man. Their faces reflected in the mirror. 1 with closed, contented eyes. The other frowning in concentration. In 3 weeks. At Yuan Guang's product launch, there would be another mirror. One that would reflect many faces. Lu Yuanhong's, Lin Wei's, the investors. Everyone who thought I'd disappeared. My job was to make sure the light from that mirror fell exactly where they least wanted it seen. I went back to bed, listening to the second train rumble past. I counted the rhythm of the rails. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the 57th beat, the sound faded. The silence of the night rushed back in. I opened financial statement analysis. From beginner to pro, using my phone flashlight. Chapter 2. The balance sheet. I read slowly, word by word. Uncle Joe was right. I'd shattered, but I was piecing myself back together. Each shard carried mud, dust, the damp of the urban village night, the static hiss of a neighbor's TV. But when I put them back, they'd be harder than before. When I closed the book, it was 3:17 a.m. A bird sang outside. Tentative, testing if the city was still alive. I turned off the light and closed my eyes. In my dream, Lin Wei was still at a rye lake, looking back and laughing, her white dress lifted in the wind, with the impossible blue of the sky behind her. I stood a few steps away, camera in hand, shouting, "Smile bigger," and she did. Teeth white, eyes crescent. Then the wind stopped. The sky turned gray. Her smile froze on her face like a waterlogged photograph. I opened my eyes. It was morning. On the 8th day, I bought a used electric scooter for $800 from a repair shop at the east end of the urban village. One headlight was broken, the brake pads worn to almost nothing, but the battery was new. Full charge would take me 60 kilometers. The owner slapped the seat and said, "This thing makes noise everywhere except the horn. But once you get used to it, it's a BMW." After 3 days of riding it, I thought he might be right. I'd never ridden a BMW, but this was certainly faster than a shared bike. 8 more orders a day. Delivery work made my body stronger than it had been in 7 years. In the office, I'd sat for 12 hours a day, my back and neck alternating protests. Now I climbed dozens of flights of stairs daily, muscles slowly returning, my breathing deepening. But I didn't let myself fall fully into the rhythm. After each shift, I spent at least 3 hours studying Uncle Zhou's ledger and the materials from Shun Du. Shin Du was introduced by Uncle Zhou. On the 8th night, I was eating noodles when a man in a black jacket walked in. Straight-backed, buzz-cut, temples already graying. Uncle Zhou saw him and called out, "Lao Shin's here." He nodded toward me. "This is Xiao Cheng I told you about." Shin Du sat down, didn't order noodles, and helped himself to a cup of tea from the counter. He looked at me differently than others, not at my clothes or my pallor, but with a gaze that seemed to take me apart and reassemble me. I recognized that look from fundraising meetings, from people who'd weathered real storms. "Old Zhou says you have Yuan Guang's books," Shindu said without preamble. "Show me." I pulled up the 47 photos on my phone and handed it over. He scrolled through them expressionlessly. When he reached the $500,000 technical service fee receipt, his thumb paused for 2 seconds. Then he continued. After finishing, he returned the phone and sipped his tea. "This is enough for a criminal case," he said. "If you want to pursue it, I can connect you with the Economic Investigation Unit. I know a few people still working. I'm not rushing to sue." Shindu glanced at Uncle Zhou, who had his back to us, wiping the stove. Shindu looked back at me. "What do you want to do?" "Yuan Guang's biggest vulnerability is their product," I said. "They took my core algorithm, but only 70%. They had to build the rest. If their patchwork has fatal flaws, once the product launches, the market will kill them for me. What if it doesn't? It has to." I didn't hesitate. Lu Yuanhang studied business. He doesn't understand algorithmic architecture. The outsourced talent he can afford is second-rate at best. Their patch will run. But it'll be unstable. An AI recommendation. An unstable system gets noticed within 3 days of launch. Shindu set down his cup and tapped the table twice. "What else do you need?" "I need to see Feng Huai." Feng Huai was my earliest investor, the one who'd lost the most in this crash. He'd put in $30 million for 15% equity. With liquidation, that money was gone. But I knew Feng Huai he wasn't the type to turn hostile over losses. He'd been in the industry 20 years and seen too many rises and falls. The first principle I'd learned from him was, you invest in people, not just projects. If I went to him now and told him Cheng Yi wasn't dead yet, he might let me finish. "I know Feng Huai," Shindu said. "I went to Yuan Guang's roadshow last year. He didn't invest. He said the project had a bad smell to it." "Have you contacted him?" "No. In my current state." I looked down at my windbreaker and faded jeans and laughed. "I can't exactly walk into his office like this. What you wear doesn't matter." Shindu stood, zipping his jacket. "I'll set it up. Tomorrow at 7. Wangjiang Pavilion. He has a regular room there. Be on time to at the door." He turned back. "Chengyi, old Zhou says you're good. I'm pickier than he is. You'd better be." The door curtain swung shut. Uncle Zhou turned from the stove. Watching the curtain sway, he said to me, "Lao Shin used to handle major cases in the central office. If he's making introductions himself, you've got a stroke of luck." I nodded. Luck. I used to believe in it. Then I didn't. Now I was learning to again. But this time, I wasn't waiting for luck to hit me. I'd reach out and take it. The next day, I quit early. Back at the hotel by 4 in the afternoon. Shower. Cold, communal, but enough to wash off the sweat. From the bottom of my suitcase, I pulled out a dark gray shirt and black trousers I hadn't worn more than a few times, to things I'd kept for industry events. Fortunately, Lin Wei hadn't thrown them out. I in front of the tiny round mirror in the hotel room. I combed my hair, shaved. The man in the mirror looked unfamiliar. Thinner, cheekbones sharper. His eyes had changed. Once warm, now cold. Wangjiang Pavilion sat in the old downtown district, unassuming from outside. But inside, it opened into a hidden gem. The host led me to a private room on the second floor with a river view. When I pushed open the door, Feng Huai was already there. By the window, a pot of pu'er tea steeped before him. He looked up, took me in, and gestured with his right hand to the seat across from him. "Sit." I sat. He poured me tea and slid it over. He was 15 years older, mostly gray, but sharp and tidy. Cuff buttons immaculate. He looked at me and waited. Mr. Feng, I'm sorry. The words had been stuck in my chest for over 2 weeks. When they finally came out, they felt weightless. "Sorry for what?" "Your money. It's all gone." He set his cup down, his fingers circling its rim. "Chengyi, I've been in this business for 20 years. I've lost money on 11 investments. You're number 12. He looked at me. But here's the thing. Of those 11 failures, only 3 founders ever came back to see me. You're the fourth. I drank the tea. Deep. Rich. Clearing the dryness from my throat. Mr. Fong. I'm not here to complain. I'm here to tell you. Yuan Guang's core product is built on my stolen algorithm, and their first round financing was done with 2 sets of books. One of those sets, Fong Hui raised his hand, cutting me off. I know all of that. The room went quiet. A boat passed on the river outside, its horn drifting through the window. Low. Muffled. You know that he pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across. I opened it. A copy of an investment term sheet from Yuan Guang Technology. Beautiful terms. $350 million valuation. 20% stake. But on the last page, someone had written a note in blue pen. Supplier scale does not match book expenses. Recommend hold. I went to their roadshow. Fong Hui said. I smelled something wrong with their supply chain data. A company barely a year old. How could they have such low unit costs? I had someone check. 2 of their 3 core upstream suppliers didn't have the capacity to fill the orders they claimed. He paused. But my capital was tied up in your project. I couldn't move. Then your project collapsed, and I was completely stranded. Then why didn't you warn me? Fong Hui's gaze was heavy. Chengyi, the truth is, I warned you 3 times in the 3 months before you went under. First, I told you Lu Yuanhang's offshore financing was murky. You said you checked, and it was fine. Second, I said Yuan Guang's name had appeared in business registration filings before. You said it was a coincidence. Third, he tapped the table. I told you to keep your distance from Lu Yuanhang. You said he'd introduced you to a lot of investors. 3 times. You didn't listen. My fingers tightened around the teacup. He was right. In those 3 months, all I'd thought about was funding and saving the company. Everything anyone said to me was muffled, heard, but not absorbed. Fong Hui was a veteran. He'd seen things I'd been blind to because I trusted Lu Yuanhang. Trusted a college roommate. Mr. Fong. I was wrong. I set the cup down and met his eyes. But being wrong once doesn't mean being wrong forever. I have recordings of Lu Yuanhang and Lin Wei transferring assets, bank records, and drafts of Yuan Guang's 2 sets of books. I've mapped their supply chain vulnerabilities, and I have someone on the inside mapping their tech weaknesses. All I need is money, he said. Money. Status. A ticket and dot. I held up 3 fingers. Yuan Guang's launch is in 3 weeks. I need to re-enter the industry before then. As someone they can't ignore. I don't need your money now. I just need an introduction. To who? Your old classmate at the public media group. I need a seat on the live stream panel the day of the launch. As a guest. Fong Hui was quiet for a long time. Another boat passed on the river, its lights painting the water gold. When he spoke, his voice was slower. Chengyi, you know if this goes sideways, I'll be dragged down with you. Yes. And you know Yuan Guang has offshore backing besides Lu Yuanhang. That Cayman shell traces up 3 levels to a Singapore family office. Those aren't the domestic investors you're used to. Their retaliation won't be just legal. I know that he stared at me for a long time. Long enough that I thought he might refuse. Then he put the term sheet back in his briefcase, stood, and walked to the window. His back was to me. I'll make the introduction. One condition. Everything you do before the launch goes through me first. Agreed. Also, the day of the launch, I sit next to you. I stood and walked to his side, looking out at the river. The city skyline was a silhouette of neon and steel. A giant skeleton. I'd once thought my company would be one of its bricks. It had been demolished. Now I planned to rebuild that with debris and mortar, with things others had thrown away. Mr. Fong. I said, how much capital can you still move? He glanced at me. Not much. A few million. It's enough. Before the launch, I'll register a new capital entity. Doesn't need to be large, that just needs a clean name. Morningstar Capital. Fong Hui chewed on the name. Why Morningstar? Venus. The brightest star before dawn. He said nothing. Then put a hand on my shoulder. Not hard. But his palm's warmth bled through my shirt. All right, go prepare. Old Shen rarely sticks his neck out for anyone. Since he vouched for you, I'll trust you. Once I left Wangjiang Pavilion around 9. The river wind was cool against my neck, but I felt clear-headed. I rode the scooter back, passing the most bustling commercial street. On the giant LED screen, Yuan Guang Technology's commercial played. Flashy, deep blue with data streams like sparks, ending with the tagline, Yuan Guang Technology. See the future with AI. I stopped at a red light and looked up for a few seconds. The screen's light washed over me, darkening the world around. At the end of the ad, A woman's profile appeared. Elegant. Smiling. The caption read, Lin Wei, Director of Marketing, Yuan Guang Technology. The light turned green. The car behind honked. I looked away, twisted the throttle, and glided into the night, back in the urban village. I chained the scooter to a post by the hotel entrance and climbed to the third floor. The hallway motion light was out again. I fumbled to 302 in the dark, reaching for the keyhole dot, and then I heard it. Movement. Soft. Paper rustling. Inside the room. My muscles snapped taut. I turned the key halfway and pushed the door open hard, slapping the wall switch. Light flared. A woman stood by my bed, holding the ledger copies I'd spread across the mattress. She wore heels and a cream-colored coat, hair loose over her shoulders, purse still on her arm that she hadn't been here long. Lin Weiat, the sound. She looked up. I recognized the expression from the day I'd signed the divorce papers. Surprise. Quickly suppressed. Struggling to maintain elegant composure. The room was vacuum silent. Receipt copies scattered across the bed. Her heels had left faint scuff marks on 2 sheets. The one in her hand was the first page of Uncle Zhou's second set of Yuan Guang books. Her thumb covering half the words technical service fee. I looked at her. She looked at me. Everything from the last 22 days. The dirt, the deliveries, the damp, the sleeplessness was written on my face for her to read. She stood in my room, in a $350 a month room with a wall outside the window. Her heels crushing my only trump card. I didn't know how she'd found this place, or when she'd picked the lock. I only knew that at that moment, something rose up from beneath the ice. Lin Wei spoke first, softer than I expected. Chengyi, these, put them down. 2 words. Not loud, but when they came out, I startled myself. They didn't sound like my voice. She didn't. We stood 2 meters apart, the fluorescent tube humming overhead like a dying insect. Then she smiled. A smile I knew too well. The one she used when she'd gotten the upper hand in negotiations. Chengyi, she said, slow. Do you know Feng Huai? Yuan Heng already knows you met him today. My fists clenched. Her voice dropped lower. Conspiratorial. He sent me to tell you. If you try to use any of this, he'll have the court re-examine every personal expense you made before your company went bankrupt. That time in Chengdu, you booked a suite and charged it to the company, Lin Wei. I cut her off. She stopped. I stepped forward, reached under the stack of papers, and pulled out a small black recorder. I pressed play. Her voice came out, clear and complete. Chengyi, do you know Feng Huai? Yuan Heng already knows you met him today. He sent me to tell you. If you try to use any of this, he'll have the court re-examine every personal expense you made before your company went bankrupt. I paused it. The room fell silent again except for the fluorescent hum. Lin Wei's face had changed. Her lips moved, no sound, and the papers slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the floor like ash. I held up the recorder and shook it. Guess what? I said. I told the hotel owner 3 days ago. If a woman in a cream-colored coat comes asking for 302, let her right up. She thinks you're my girlfriend. When you walked in, she pointed the way. Lin Wei's fingers on her purse strap whitened. Her expression moved through shock to something I'd never seen on her face before. Panic. She'd always been composed, always knew her next move. But here, in this curtainless room, wearing her $2,000 coat and heels, surrounded by the evidence of her crimes, with her recorded voice still hanging in the air, she was lost. Chengyi. Her voice finally cracked. What do you want? I put the recorder in my pocket, bent down, picked up the receipt she'd stepped on, dusted it off, and refolded it. You don't need to worry about what I want. Go tell Lu Yuan Hang that he's got 3 weeks. I suggest he thoroughly recheck his product's underlying architecture, because one day, it might just die in front of everyone. Her lashes trembled. She turned to go, her heels clicking quickly. At the door, she paused, back to me, her shoulders shaking. Chengyi. Her voice was different now. Low, stripped of negotiation. I thought you made your choice. I finished for her. Don't look back now. Keep going. Walk fast, so I don't have to see you. She didn't speak again. The door opened and closed, heels fading down the hall to the stairs. I stood still until the sound was gone. Then I sank onto the bed. There was a faint trace of her scent on the sheets, the perfume I used to recognize, then hadn't smelled in a long time. This was the last time I'd ever smell it. I picked up the recorder and played it again. Her voice came through, crystal clear. He sent me to tell you. He'll have the court re-examine. Each word distinct. I saved 3 copies. Phone, cloud, backup flash drive. Then I turned off the light and sat in the dark. The wall outside blocked everything. Pitch black. I reached for the finance book on the nightstand, my thumb tracing the faded title on its spine. 3 weeks. 18 days left. Tonight's visit had just become another piece on my board. The night stretched on. But the morning star would always rise before dawn. The day after Lin Wei's visit, I changed the room lock. The hotel owner charged me a $50 deposit and said I was being ridiculous. Who'd want to break into a dump like this anyway? I didn't explain. From then on, I wedged a strand of hair in the doorframe every morning and checked it each night when I returned. It was always there. Days hummed along like the urban village's dawn soy milk machine. I still got up at 6. Still rode the scooter to take orders. Still had lunch at Uncle Joe's. Catching up on intel over a bowl of noodles. Then took more orders until dark. After finishing, I'd return to 302 to study the increasingly dog-eared finance book and the encrypted emails Chun Mo sent every few days. Chun Mo had successfully infiltrated Yuan Guang Technology. Using his cousin's identity, he'd passed 2 rounds of interviews and was placed in the core algorithm group as a data engineer. His intel grew more valuable by the day. Yuan Guang's tech team had about 20 people, with 3 senior architects poached from overseas firms. Chun Mo spent a week mapping how they'd patched the missing 30% of the algorithm. And the conclusion was close to what I'd guessed. They'd wrapped an open-source framework on top. It ran in demo mode, but they'd made no optimizations for anomaly tolerance in production. In a lab environment, it looked fine, but with real traffic, the long tail of anomalous data would wear through their thin wrapper. Their current accuracy is 87% on the test set. Chun Mo said in an encrypted voice message, keeping his voice low. But the test set is clean data they curated themselves. I ran a dirty public data set. The accuracy dropped to 51%. Yet they can't handle the real world. I typed in my notes. Launch plus 3 days. Failure window. That was the shortest time I could calculate. With Yuan Guang's team, discovering a production failure and fixing it would take at least 3 to 5 days. If I could activate a trigger Chun Mo had pre-embedded on launch day, the failure would erupt on the 3rd or 4th day. By then, enough users would have onboarded. Complaints and churn would cascade from every channel. But activating the trigger required me to be at the launch. It required Lu Yuanhang and Lin Wei to see me. Alive, seated calmly in the audience or somewhere higher. Once their attention was on me, Chun Mo's pre-embedded code would slip through their detection. I ran the logic chain through 3 times, mapping every link on an A4 sheet, marking risks in red. The biggest risk was whether I could get a legitimate seat at the launch. Feng Hui was working on it, but nothing was confirmed yet. The second biggest risk was Lin Wei tipping off Lu Yuanhang. She'd seen the paperwork spread across my bed. She knew what I was up to, but she'd also said, that night, that Lu Yuanhang already knew. That had been a mistake. If he'd truly known, he wouldn't have sent her to test me. Her visit meant they were nervous, uncertain what I had, gambling that a threat would scare me off. They didn't understand the new me. The old me might have been intimidated. Looking for a way out, a way to keep dignity. The new me had nothing, no way back, no dignity. It had shattered the moment the court seal went on. A man with nothing to fear is the one others fear most. On the 14th day, Feng Hui's message came. For words. Seat is confirmed. I was on my 6th delivery of the day when I saw it. My scooter bumped over a speed bump, and the phone almost flew out of my hand. I pulled over and read those 4 words 3 times. Then I finished delivering the braised chicken rice. The customer was on the 5th floor. No elevator. When I handed over the bag, my hands were still trembling. The customer, a young woman, looked at me. You're really flushed. Buddy. Fever. No, just running. Back on the scooter. I fixed the phone mount, twisted the throttle, and the wind poured through my jacket. Something inside me felt like it was expanding. The seat Feng Hui secured was a guest slot at the National Business Innovation Forum. The day of the launch. At 9 a.m. in the same convention center main hall. Yuan Guang's product launch was at 2 p.m. in a secondary hall. That meant I'd be on the main stage in the morning. Lin Wei and Lu Yuanhang, even if they weren't scheduled in the main hall, would know I was there. I needed to say something on that stage weighty enough for the cameras and media to focus on me. Only then, when Chun Mo's trigger fired that afternoon, would everyone connect the 2 things. A man who'd announced his comeback in the morning, and a company whose system crashed in front of the whole industry in the afternoon. But before all that, there was one last thing. On the evening of the 17th day, I changed into the dark gray shirt and black trousers, combed my hair, and looked at myself in the round mirror. I'd lost nearly 10 pounds. The lines of my cheekbones were sharper, my eyes slightly deeper, but I looked more angular than before, less soft, less accommodating. The old Chung Yi was fading. The thin man in the mirror was almost a stranger. I put my phone, the recorder, an encrypted flash drive with all evidence backups, and a new business card Fong Hui had prepared into my jacket's inner pocket. The card read, Morningstar Capital, founder. The capital entity had been registered 2 days ago. 5 million in registered capital. 3 million of actual bridge funding from Fong Hui. The shell was empty, but the card was real. The gold lettering catching the light that I was going to meet someone tonight. Yuan Guang's largest upstream supplier, a data annotation company called Mingtu Data. Uncle Zhou's ledgers showed Yuan Guang had placed virtual orders far beyond their actual needs, inflating expenses by $800,000. That meant Mingtu had a receivable on their books. Yuan Guang had only paid the deposit. The balance was due after launch. If Mingtu got wind before the launch that the full payment might never come, they'd get nervous. Suppliers panic when clients are about to blow up. When a blow-up happens, their labor costs disappear. Uncle Zhou had connected me to Mingtu's CEO, Sun Jiaming, through a relative who'd worked with Zhou's old audit unit. Sun Jiaming was sharp. He'd taken the hint and agreed to meet tonight at his office. Mingtu Data was in an office building on East 4th Ring, 7th floor. All glass partitions, fully lit. I was led into Sun's office. He was on the phone, his tone anxious. I told you that balance has to go through the corporate account. You can't pay with a promissory note. What? Repeat that. He hung up and looked at me. Sun was in his 40s. Stocky, rimless glasses, receding hairline, but his gaze was sharp. He gestured to the sofa. Sit. Water's over there. I Saturday, not touching the glass. Mr. Sunday. I'm Chung Yi from Morningstar Capital. Uncle Zhou mentioned me. Old Zhou said you had leverage on Yuan Guang. Sun leaned back, arms crossed, appraising me like a piece of cargo. Let's get straight to it. What do you want? I pulled out a copy of Uncle Zhou's ledger, opened to the Mingtu page, and slid it across. Yuan Guang owes you a balance, roughly $320,000. It's been over 3 months. The order was inflated from the start. Their actual demand is half of what they ordered. They used the other half to inflate their books for investors. Whether they can pay the balance depends on whether their product launches successfully. If the product fails, just tell me. Sun cut in. Will it fail? I met his eyes. Yes. The office went quiet. Sun took off his glasses, wiped them on his sleeve, and put them back on. You're direct. How do I know I can trust you? I pulled out my phone and showed him Chun Mo's vulnerability report. I have someone inside. Their product's fault tolerance layer is unoptimized. It'll crash systemically within 3 days of launch. And their core algorithm was stolen. When that comes out, investors will pull out. Upstream and downstream will freeze. And you won't see a cent of that $320,000. Sun took the phone, scanning the screen quickly, his brow furrowing. When he looked up, he smiled. Chung Yi, you're an interesting one. A bankrupt man with someone inside the competitor's company, access to a supplier's books, and sitting in my office making demands. He leaned forward. What do you want on launch day? Yuan Guang's technical support team will send you an urgent request to increase real-time data annotation throughput for system debugging. I need you to delay your response by 4 hours. Don't refuse. Just drag your feet. Say the server expansion needs approval. Sun tapped the desk 7 times. 4 hours. And my balance. Within a week of the launch. If Yuan Guang blows up, you won't get that money from them. But if you help me. I pulled out the Morningstar card and placed it on the table. Morningstar will take over the data annotation demand released by Yuan Guang's collapse. The first order will be for $400,000. 50% upfront. Sun picked up the card, examined it front and back, and put it in his drawer. He stood and extended his hand. Mr. Chung, pleasure doing business. I shook his hand. Firm, dry, pleasure. It was almost 10 when I left Mingtu's building. The night wind was cool on my neck. I stood on the steps, watching the elevated highway stream with traffic. Taillights like a flowing red river. I texted Shun, do supplier handled. Next, I need you to lock down the last financial link. Hard evidence on Chintzy Capital's offshore funds, something I can cite publicly on launch day. 0.5 minutes later. Shindu replied. In progress. Wednesday. I put the phone away, walked down, and got on the scooter, passing a 24-hour convenience store. I stopped for water. The cashier yawned as the wall-mounted TV played last night's news. I was screwing the cap back on when my eye caught the screen. Yuan Guang Technology closes bridge financing. Valuation reaches $500 million. Product launch in 3 days. 3 days. I stared at that headline for a few seconds, then mounted the scooter. Its wheels crunched over a fallen leaf on the pavement. Back in 302. I opened my laptop and laid out all the completed threads into a flowchart. Feng Huai's confirmed seat. Chen Mo's vulnerability map. Sun Jiaming's supply chain delay commitment. Shindu's financial chain evidence. Each line was marked with a green confirmation. One line remained unconfirmed. The day itself. I sat on the bed, reading the flowchart. It looked like a precision clockwork diagram. Each gear meshing with the next. A single loose screw would freeze the whole machine, and I was the central screw. If the morning's keynote didn't carry enough weight, the afternoon's follow-up actions would lack the cover of attention. The media wouldn't connect the two events. The public wouldn't see my name and Yuan Guang's collapse on the same trending list. Lu Yuanhang and Lin Wei would still have a chance to crawl out of the ruins that I needed to make everyone remember me in that 20 minutes. Remember a name that had fallen. Remember a man who stood back up. Remember every word I said. How? I stared at the screen. Then I opened my photo album. The Arai Lake wedding photo from a year ago. Lin Wei's back. The wind. Her laughing face. I stared at that smile for a long time. Then I closed it. I knew what I would say. The next day was the 18th. At lunch, Uncle Zhou brought me a bowl with an extra plate of braised beef. I looked up. He waved me off. Don't overthink it. Too much beef today, or it'll go bad. I picked up a slice. Tender. Fragrant. Halfway through. He sat across from me. Day after tomorrow. You're on stage. Nervous. No. I meant it. I'd rehearsed that 20-minute speech in my head dozens of times. Every word. Every pause. Every glance at the camera. The nerves had worn away. All that remained was a deep stillness, like a stone at the bottom of water. Good. He nodded. One thing. After the day after tomorrow. Whatever happens, don't come back to me. Keep the ledger drafts safe. I'll burn the paper copies. Whatever Laoshan gives you. Store it well. Uncle. I'm an old man. What can they do to me? Just telling you. Don't get tangled. You go to your big thing. I watched him bend over the stove. I wanted to say something, but the words circled my mouth and settled on. Uncle. The noodles were good. He waved. Not looking back, that night, I slept earlier than usual. Before bed, I re-backed up every evidence file. 3 flash drives hidden in the suitcase's lining, the windbreaker's inner pocket, and a hollowed-out section of the finance book. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. Before I closed my eyes, I remembered what Feng Huai had said at Wangjiang Pavilion. You're the kind who breaks and picks up the pieces. I recited those words to myself once, imagining the lights of the day after tomorrow. I imagined the faces in the audience. Lu Yuanhang, somewhere in the back, his expression shifting from smug to stiff to ashen. Lin Wei, maybe closer. Her always composed eyes reflecting my silhouette on stage. She'd remember that night 22 days ago, pushing the divorce papers toward me. She'd remember me saying, the house, the car, the savings. All yours. She'd remember my back as I dragged the suitcase out the door. Remember those polished brown leather shoes. I wanted her to remember every detail, every word, every image, because I did. Every night over these days, I'd been remembering. They piled like bricks, forming a scaffolding I couldn't see, leading somewhere. Day after tomorrow at 9 a.m. Main hall of the National Business Innovation Forum. Under the lights, I'd stand, the night before the launch. Yuan Guang held an industry reception, ostensibly a pre-launch networking event. It was attended by half the tech investment world. Investors, media, partners. Feng Huai forwarded me the invitation. They don't know you're coming. This is your ticket in. Your call. I sat on the bed, looking at the digital invite. It listed the venue. China World Tower. 66th floor, Sky Banquet Hall. Time. 8 p.m. I glanced at the clock. Just past 7. I stood and took out the dark gray shirt, smoothing the wrinkles. The trousers were the same black ones, but Feng Huai had sent a new pair of leather shoes. Black. Soft soles. No scuffs. You can't go on stage in sneakers, he'd said. I put them on and looked at myself in the round mirror. Thin. Quiet. A shadow of collarbone at the shirt collar. But my spine was straight. I slicked my hair back with some gel I found on the bathroom sink. Put the Morningstar card in my inner pocket. Checked the recorder's battery. And walked out the door. China World Tower. I'd been here 3 years ago, when the company had just closed its Series A. Lu Yuanhang had dragged me to an industry dinner to network. That night, he'd gotten drunk, thrown his arm around me in the elevator, and slurred, Yezi, we're going public. The elevator mirrors reflected our flushed faces. We thought we stood at the gates of the future point 3 years later. Those gates had closed on me, and he'd bolted them from inside. Now I was going to kick them open. The elevator opened on 66. The sound of the reception washed over me. Crystal chandeliers flooded the space. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Beijing's nightscape, layer upon layer of lights stretching to the horizon. Nearly 100 people mingled in clusters. Waitstaff in evening dress carried champagne flutes. The air mixed perfume, alcohol, and the carefully curated scent of success that I checked in at the door. The receptionist glanced at my card, a flicker of confusion in her eyes, but she let me through. I walked in, took a sparkling water from a passing tray, and moved along the perimeter. I spotted familiar faces. Investors, a tech magazine editor, a few peers, but most didn't know me, or rather, didn't know the me standing here now. Near the far end of the hall, I saw Sun Jianming talking to two men in suits, an unlit cigar in his hand. When he saw me, his gaze paused for a fraction of a second, a barely perceptible nod. He went back to his conversation. I kept walking. Then I saw her. Lin Wei stood at the center of the room, in a wine-red knee-length dress, hair perfectly pinned, her neckline clean and elegant. She held a half-empty glass of red wine, talking to a bespectacled middle-aged man, head tilted slightly, wearing the polite, distant smile I'd seen in countless settings. She looked great, better than before the divorce. No fatigue, her features softer, like a burden had been lifted. The light caught the satin of her dress. The man said something, and she laughed, lightly touching his arm. A gesture I recognized. She used to do it with me at dinners, bridging distance, creating intimacy. I thought it was only for me. Now I saw it as her most used social tool. I stood about 15 paces away, separated by a few people and a long table of desserts. Watching, she hadn't noticed me yet. All her attention was on the conversation. I took a sip of the sparkling water. It had gone flat. I set the glass down. Lin Wei's gaze drifted across the room, past the potted plant near me, back, and landed on my face. Her expression changed fast. So fast that if I hadn't been watching, I'd have missed it. That smile shattered like a reflection on water broken by a stone. Her lashes fluttered. Her pupils contracted. The man beside her was still talking. She didn't react. Her fingers on the wine stem went white. I looked at her. Then I raised my glass in a toast. Just a slight lift. A ghost of a smile. And turned toward the terrace. 5 steps in. I heard her heels behind me, faster than her usual unhurried pace. A little rushed. Scuffing. On the terrace. The wind was strong. 66 floors up, gusting against my chest. I gripped the railing and looked down at the river of headlights below. The sliding door opened and clicked shut behind me. Her footsteps stopped about 2 meters back. Chengyi. Her voice was tighter than in the hotel room. Like someone was pinching her throat. I turned, leaning against the railing. Lin Wei stood 2 steps away, hands clasped in front, fingers tangled, uncharacteristically uncertain. The terrace was dimmer than the ballroom. Her wine-red dress looked near black. Long time no see, I said, flat. You look well. Her mouth twitched, as if trying to summon a composed smile. Then failing. What are you doing here? Got an invitation. I pulled out the printed copy Feng Huai had forwarded. Yuan Guang's pre-launch reception that welcomes industry peers. Am I an industry peer? I tilted my head. If not, how about a former partner? Or your ex-husband? Her complexion paled another shade. A sliver of light from inside caught her cheek, illuminating a small tremor beneath the skin. Chengyi, don't what? She took a breath, trying to reassemble her composure. What do you want? Coming here tonight. To catch up with old friends. I shrugged. And to see Yuan Hang. Haven't seen him in a while. Miss him. Actually, the last line came out light. Like discussing the weather. Something flashed in Lin Wei's eyes. She was trying to decide if I was here to cause trouble or had some other agenda. She was always good at reading people. But this time, she lacked too much information. She didn't know about Chun Mo in the algorithm group. Didn't know about Sun Jianming. Didn't know I'd be on the main forum stage at 9 a.m. She only saw her ex-husband in a clean shirt, with a business card from an unknown capital firm, crashing her launch eve party. She knew nothing, but her gut was screaming, because after 6 years of marriage, she knew I never did anything unprepared. Yuan Hang isn't here, she said. He has an investor dinner. He'll come later. Then I'll wait. She stepped closer, voice low, a grinding softness behind her teeth. What do you really want? You signed the divorce. You gave up the assets. You said you'd never come back to me. I didn't come for you. I looked at her. You came to me. That night, in the hotel room, her shoulders flinched. You stepped on my stuff. I'm just checking if you touched anything else. A few seconds of silence. The wind blew a strand of hair across her face. She tucked it behind her ear at a familiar motion. Her neck curving into a shape I'd seen for 6 years at my pillow's edge. Some corner of my heart still stung. Dully. Barry. I didn't touch your things. She finally said, barely audible. I looked and left. That night. What you said. I spent the whole night thinking. About what? She looked down at a seam on the terrace floor. About a lot of things. Chungyi. I thought the sliding door opened. A man in a white suit stepped out. A glass in hand. Slightly unsteady. Clearly a few drinks in. He spotted them. Oh, Ms. Lin's hiding out here. Come on. Someone's looking for you. His eyes shifted to me. And this is a friend. Lin Wei said. Faster than usual. I'll be right in. She turned to leave. Her arm brushing my jacket sleeve. A moment of warmth through the fabric. She paused, turning her head just enough for me to hear. You've lost weight. Then she was gone. The white-suited man nodded at me and followed. The terrace was mine again. The door clicked shut. I turned back to the railing, squinting against the wind. Her words hung in the air. 3 syllables. Light as a feather on water. But where had that feather come from? Guilt? Pity? Or had she, seeing the receipts spread across the bed, realized she'd chosen the wrong path that I didn't know? And I wasn't going to find out. I stayed until the wind had cut through my shirt. Then I went back inside. The reception continued. I walked through, exchanging brief words with a few former acquaintances, handing out Morningstar cards, promising to catch up later. No one asked about my bankruptcy. No one mentioned Yuan Guang. This crowd was too trained for that. Around 10, I spotted a familiar figure entering the ballroom. Lu Yuanhang. Navy suit. Sharp tailoring. Perfectly tied tie. Better groomed than 6 months ago. Taking success from others. Clearly aged you in reverse. He didn't see me at first. He moved toward the center. Met Lin Wei. They stood at a professional distance. But his hand brushed her lower back before pulling away. To outsiders, it looked like polite partnership. But I knew how he touched her. I knew his thumb pressed just slightly. A habit he'd let slip when he'd had too much to drink. I crossed the room and stopped in front of them. Lu Yuanhang was mid-laugh with an investor. When his eyes landed on me, a flicker of surprise came and went like snow melting, replaced by a perfect business smile. Chungyi, he said, voice level. You came. You should have said. Last-minute impulse. I extended my hand. He hesitated half a second, then shook. My palm cold. His warm. I squeezed. He didn't squeeze back, but he didn't pull away either. Your product launch is tomorrow. Right, I said, like 2 old friends chatting. Congratulations. The product's been a long time coming. His smile held. Thanks. I heard you've started something new. Morningstar Capital. Nice name. Small stuff. Not in Yuan Guang's league. The investor, sensing the undertow, excused himself. Lin Wei stood half a step behind Lu Yuanhang, her fingers gripping her purse. Face tight. Lu Yuanhang glanced at her. Something quick in his eyes. Then back at me. Chungyi, he said, lowering his voice. With so many people here, how about we find a quieter spot? Sure. He led me to a small side lounge adjacent to the ballroom and closed the door. Just the 2 of us. A couch. A floor lamp. A landscape painting. He stood with his back to the desk, hands on its edge. Casual. But I noticed his fingers were slightly arched, like a claw ready to grip. Chungyi, let's cut the act. His voice lost its oiliness, replaced by a low, impatient edge. You're here for me, aren't you? You felt that. He laughed. A cold sound in the warm lamplight. I know roughly what you've got. Don't do anything stupid. Yuan Guang isn't your little company anymore. You know who's backing it. If you leak your evidence, worst case, you drag me down for a few months. You won't bring me down, but your own outcome. He tilted his head. You don't want to know. I looked at him. The lamplight split his face, half bright, half shadow. This man had been my college roommate, slept in the bunk above me. He was the first person I called when I started my business. I was his best man. 12 years of friendship, distilled to this small room. Him leaning against a desk, warning me to back off. Yuanhang, I said, softly. Remember the night you fell out of the top bunk in college? Hit your head on the desk. Bled everywhere. I carried you to the university clinic in the rain. Fell twice. Skinned my knees. Didn't drop you. His expression shifted, the cold smile frozen. What's that got to do with anything? Just making sure you remember. I said, all those years I really thought of you as a brother. He was silent for 3 seconds. Then, Chungyi, there are no brothers in business. If you'd said that 12 years ago, maybe I wouldn't have opened the door for you. He straightened, buttoned his suit jacket. You can leave now. After tomorrow, Yuan Guang is the new industry star. If you want, I can introduce you to some LPs for Morningstar. Start over. We're separate rivers now that I looked into his eyes and saw it clearly. The boy who'd fallen out of bed and called for me to carry him was gone. The man before me was someone else or perhaps had always been this person. And I'd just never seen him clearly. See you at the launch, I said, my hand on the door. Oh, Yuan Hang. He looked at me. The 30% of the algorithm you had to patch. You used TFS 2.0, didn't you? That framework has a native vulnerability in high concurrency. What QPS did you test at? 500. 1,000. His face went still. Real world peak is 15,000. I said, smiling. Think your wrapper can handle that? I didn't wait for his answer. I opened the door and walked out. Lin Wei was still in the hallway. She looked up at the sound. Lips parted. I walked past her without stopping at the exit. I turned back once. Through the glass door, I saw Lu Yuanhang standing at the lounge entrance. Phone pressed to his ear. His face was white as paper under the light. I pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. Stepping in, I texted Chen Mo tomorrow. As planned, he replied with an OK emoji. The elevator descended. 66. 65. The numbers dropping. I leaned against the wall. A small damp patch of sweat at my shoulder. I opened my fist. Nails leaving 4 crescent-shaped indentations in my palm. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Main stage. 2 p.m. Yuan Guang's product launch. Within an hour, the first wave of real traffic. By the evening, 2 names on the trending list. Mine, Yuan Guang's. In the mirror, everything would be exposed. Lu Yuanhang didn't sleep that night. I learned that the next morning from Chun Mo, who sent an encrypted message at 5 a.m. Internal team chat had a voice memo from Lu at 2 a.m. He's telling the tech team to come in early. State of emergency. His voice is shot, like he'd been sitting somewhere for hours before forcing himself to speak. He's panicked. He made the architecture team run another load test overnight. You were right about the foundation. Last-minute fixes won't help. Results are bad. He's been pacing the floor, yelling at everyone. I read it in 302. The sky barely light outside. The urban village was still quiet. The occasional rustle of a broom sweeping fallen leaves in the distance. I closed the screen and sat in the dark for a moment. Then I got up, washed, dressed, dark gray shirt, and a new jacket. Navy. Delivered by Fong Hui yesterday. Tag still on. Size perfect. I put it on and looked in the mirror. The shoulders were sharp. The chest fit. The man who had dragged a suitcase out of a sealed office building had shed his skin. Same person inside, but new armor. AT 7.30. I stepped out. Uncle Joe's noodle shop wasn't open yet. The metal shutter still down. Only a strip of yellow light from the kitchen behind it. I hung a bag of steamed buns on the door handle and walked to the corner. Hailing a taxi to the convention center. The route passed over the South 3rd Ring elevated highway at the same stretch where I'd ridden in a taxi on the night of the bankruptcy. Same scenery, same traffic. The city churned on. Oblivious. I leaned back and set my phone to do not disturb, allowing only Chen Mo, Fong Hui and Shun Du's emergency calls. Outside, the world rushed past. I closed my eyes and ran through my speech one more time. 9 a.m. Main hall of the National Business Innovation Forum. The lights came up as I stood at the side of the stage. The MC was introducing the next speaker. Next up, many of you will remember this name. He once founded one of the country's earliest AI recommendation engines. He's had some setbacks and recently re-emerged in a new capacity. Please welcome the founder of Morningstar Capital. Mr. Chung Ye.My name was spoken like a coin dropped into a pond. Ripples spreading outward. A low murmur from the audience. People whispered. A few turned to check their phones. I took a breath and stepped into the light. The full force of the stage hit me. 1,000-seat hall. Rows deep. Media cameras swung to face me. Red recording lights blinking. A row of waiting eyes. I walked to the center. Adjusted the mic and looked out. In the front row, Fong Hui nodded slightly. Beside him sat Shen Du, arms crossed. Expressionless. A few seats over, I spotted Yuan Guang's marketing people. But the important ones were in the second row. Aisle seats. A man in navy. A woman in white. Lu Yuanhang and Lin Wei. They hadn't sat in front. But they'd come. And after I stepped off stage, they'd come to me. But not yet. First, I had to fill this stage. Hello everyone, I said, my voice filling the hall. I'm Ching Yi. Some of you might know my name. Some might be hearing it for the first time. Doesn't matter. What matters is a word I want to share with you today. I paused, scanning the audience. I didn't pause on Lu Yuanhang. I didn't pause on Lin Wei. That word is ruins. The room quieted. 23 days ago, my company went bankrupt. The court sealed my office. The bank froze my accounts. I moved into a $350 a month room in an old neighborhood. I thought I'd lost everything. I saw familiar faces in the audience. Some frowning, some thoughtful. The cameras held still, but I discovered that ruins have two meanings. The first, you have nothing. The second, you have nothing to fear. A person who fears nothing, starting over from nothing, needs only one thing. A mirror. A mirror to see clearly what surrounds him. I paused. I spent 23 days piecing that mirror together. I stand here today not to complain, not to shame anyone. I stand to tell everyone who's ever fallen into ruins. The mirror shows two paths. 1. Stay where you are and wait for it to collapse completely. 2. Walk out on the bricks you tore down yourself. Applause broke out, louder than before. Feng Hui clapped. Shin Du had uncrossed his arms. In the media section, note-takers scribbled. Shutter clicks peppered the room. I hadn't named Yuan Guang. I hadn't named Lu Yuanhang or Lin Wei. Some things are more powerful unsaid. The audience would remember ruins and mirror. And a name that had reappeared after 23 days. The rest they'd connect for themselves that afternoon. After the panel, I spent 40 minutes with industry veterans. Several journalists gestured for follow-ups. I smiled through it all. My peripheral vision never leaving the rear exit. Lu Yuanhang and Lin Wei had left mid-session. Him nearly jogging, her white suit swishing between rows. They were preparing for the 2 p.m. launch. By11. I was out. My phone buzzed. Chen Mo trigger embedded. Launch at 2 p.m. System warm-up starts then. Errors expected around 3 p.m. Tech team is still doing final load tests. Very tense. I replied. Good. I walked out of the main building. Sunlight poured down. Early June in Beijing. Already hot. I took off my jacket, draped it over my arm, and called Feng Hui. Mr. Feng, when you go into Yuan Guang's hall this afternoon, bring someone with you. Who? Chen Mo. He resigned from Yuan Guang this morning. During lunch break. He'll come in as my assistant. Feng Hui was silent for 2 seconds. You pulled him out. The trigger is already set. Keeping him there would have been dangerous. His logs could be traced if they started digging. Clean exit was the right move. Fine. I'll meet him at 2. I hung up. The sun was hot on my neck. Far off, pigeons circled over the city's skyline, their wings flashing silver. I watched them for a while, then texted Shun, do financial chain evidence ready. He replied quickly. Ready. Chenxi Capital's final source traces to a Singapore family office, but the second layer reveals a direct link to Lu Yuanhang's personal account. This can be classified as cross-border money laundering at the regulatory level. I have a package ready to send to media anytime. Sending at 3:30. Received. I put the phone away, crossed the central plaza, and sat in a cafe by the window with an iced Americano. I sipped it slowly, watching the crowd pass. The time on my phone ticked. 11:47, 12:03, 12:35. The hour passed like a dull blade. At 1:50. I left the cafe and walked back to the convention center. Yuan Guang's product launch was in Hall 2. Smaller than the main hall, but still 600 or 700 seats. Industry media, investors, potential partners. I didn't enter through the main entrance. I took a staff corridor and stood on the mezzanine, with a clear view of the stage and upper audience. 2 p.m. Lights dimmed. The screen played Yuan Guang's promotional video. The same one I'd seen on the LED billboard. Deep blue, streaming data points. The video ended with Lin Wei's profile and the caption, Lin Wei, Director of Marketing, Yuan Guang Technology. Lu Yuanhang stepped on stage in a light gray suit, calmer than the night before, but from the mezzanine, I could see his thumb and forefinger rubbing the microphone stem. A nervous tick. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to Yuan Guang Technology's product launch. Today, we're proud to show you a product that will truly change the industry. I pulled out my phone and texted Chun Mo ready. He replied with a thumbs up. At 2.23. Lu Yuanhang began the demo. The screen showed the product interface. Smooth animations, elegant data visualizations, real-time recommendations. The audience responded positively. Photos were taken. Quiet murmurs. At 2.37. The demo reached its climax. Let's look at how this system performs under high concurrency, Lu Yuanhang said. He clicked a button, and simulated test traffic poured in. Numbers raced across the screen like a river of light. I checked my phone. Then I looked at the row where Yuan Guang's tech team sat. They'd started to look uneasy. One young engineer glanced at his laptop. His face pale. He nudged his neighbor. They exchanged a glance. AT 2.42. The data visualization stuttered. Briefly. Almost imperceptibly. Lu Yuanhang had his back to the screen. He didn't see it. But a few sharp-eyed viewers frowned. From the mezzanine, I saw that tiny stutter. Like an off note in a melody. Quickly covered by the main tune. But sharp ears had heard AT 2.51. Shenmo's trigger hit. The interface slowed. Then the recommendation column flooded with nonsensical results. A folk song followed by industrial machinery. A children's cartoon. A beauty tutorial. 4 unrelated items side by side. Low laughter rippled through the audience. Lu Yuanhang turned. His smile froze like a mask torn from his face. He tried to switch screens. But error windows cascaded like an unstoppable chain reaction. The system is performing real-time optimizations, he said, his voice already tight. Please bear with us. But someone from the tech team had already run out. People in the audience were whispering, phones glowing in the dimmed hall. Cameras focused on the error codes. Red. Glaring. I put down my phone. Shindu's package had been sent at 3.30 to major financial media. Shenmo's trigger had exposed the underlying defect. Sun jamming had delayed real-time data annotation by 4 hours. Everything had snapped into place. Gears turning. Clock hands aligning. Now I went downstairs. I pushed open the side door into Hall 2. The chaos had fully broken out. People were streaming toward the exits. Some shouting at the stage. Journalists pushed forward with microphones. Lu Yuanhang stood frozen, his hand still gripping the microphone. His face ashen. I moved through the crowd to the front row, where a woman in white stood. Back to me. Her shoulders slumped. Phone to her ear. Her free hand hung at her side, fingers trembling. The call clearly wasn't answered. She lowered the phone and turned. Lin Wei. Her makeup was smudged. A dark streak at the corner of one eye. Her lips trembled. All trace of composure was gone. Replaced by something I'd never seen on her face. The blankness of total collapse. Chengyi. Her voice was hoarse. You did this. You saw the news. I asked. My tone soft. You should have known I'd be in the news. A dull thud from the stage. Lu Yuanhang had dropped the microphone. Its screech filling the room before going silent. Security guided the evacuation. Journalists swarmed the stage. I stood before Lin Wei. With the chaos behind her, she looked up. Her eyes were wet. Chengyi, she said again. Softer this time. Almost inaudible. I was wrong. I looked into her eyes. 6 years of love, trust, and then hate. Now they held tears and the hindsight of a woman who'd chosen wrongly. But the chest where I'd stored those old feelings I'd checked many times. The key was gone. You're not wrong. I said. You chose a path. Walk it well. I turned and walked toward the exit. Behind me, her voice, even softer. Like she was speaking to herself. You've lost weight. I paused at the door for a second. I didn't look back. The moment I pushed through, my phone buzzed. Shindual Media have received the package. Morningstar Capital's connection to Yuan Guang's money laundering chain is now public. Lu Yuanhang's personal accounts will be frozen this afternoon. The sun was warm on my face. I walked out of the convention center and into the afternoon. Outside, the crowd had swelled. Journalists, cameramen, live streamers stopped choking the entrance to Hall 2. When I came around from the side exit, a camera turned toward me. Its lens cover clicking open. I didn't flinch or hurry. I walked calmly through the cordon of lenses, toward the black car Fong Hui had arranged. When the door closed, my phone erupted. Messages, notifications, headlines. I opened one. Yuan Guang Technologies launch crashes on stage. Founder Lu Yuanhang escorted out. Another. Exclusive. Xingyi of Morningstar Capital claims Yuan Guang's core algorithm was stolen. Media receive anonymous evidence package. Trending list. 4 spots for Yuan Guang. Followed by Chengyi. Morningstar Capital. Lu Yuanhang data fraud. All topped with red-hot tags. I leaned back. The screen light reflecting on my face. Fong Hui was in the front passenger seat. Phone to his ear. Voice low and authoritative. Chen Mo sat beside me. Laptop open to a real-time monitoring page. Discussion volume about Yuan Guang was climbing exponentially. He scrolled, pausing occasionally, then kept going. The car was quiet, except for Fong Hui's phone and the constant vibration of my OWN.ye. Chen Mo turned, his lean face lit by the screen. Someone's leaking a message. but says Yuan Guang's underlying architecture has anonymous code patches from a former employee. The source is another former employee from their tech group. Did you post it.no? Someone else followed. They've released a code diff report. The engineering community is already picking apart the vulnerabilities in their patchwork. We don't even have to act, the industry's doing it for us. That I didn't speak. I leaned back, watching the light and shadow shift through the windows, the city breathing. A new push notification appeared. Lu Yuanhang issues personal statement. I opened it. Short, clearly drafted in a panic. Today's system failure was due to technical team debugging errors, unrelated to the product itself. Yuan Guang Technology accepts full responsibility to all investors and partners. Ms. Lin Wei, Director of Marketing, has resigned for personal reasons. Effective immediately, Lin Wei had resigned. She'd left him. I set the phone face down on the seat. The car turned toward Wangjiang Pavilion. Fang Hui hung up and turned back. Chengyi, there's a finance channel interview at 5:30. Prepare for a 20-minute live Q&A. Good. We arrived at 4. Fang Hui arranged a small meeting room. Chinemo set up the feed and left. I sat by the window. The afternoon sun slanted across the carpet, illuminating motes of dust. I stood and looked out at the river. A tourist boat moving slowly, trailing white wake. I ran through the questions I'd face. The Yuan Guang incident. Morningstar's background. Where I'd been for the past 23 days. My personal history with Lu Yuanhang. Each answer was ready. My phone lit up. An unknown number. But I recognized the digits. Lin Wei's backup number. The message was 7 characters. Can we meet one more time? I stared at the screen. The light moved across the carpet. My thumb hovered, then pressed the lock button. The screen went dark. 5:30. The live feed began. I sat in the meeting room. A fill light angled in front of me. The host's voice came through my earpiece. Professional. Steady. Mr. Chung. Thank you for joining us. Today's Yuan Guang incident has caused major shockwaves. We noticed you gave a keynote this morning, and this afternoon Yuan Guang's system failed. Some are connecting the two. What's your response? I leaned forward, my eyes on the small red light above the camera. Yuan Guang's system failure isn't directly related to my speech. This morning I spoke about ruins and starting over. Yuan Guang's problem is that its technical foundation was papered over. It couldn't withstand the real world. But we've received an anonymous submission suggesting Yuan Guang's core algorithm came from a now bankrupt company, your previous company. Do you believe Yuan Guang plagiarized? I don't believe it. I know a beat of silence in my earpiece. Mr. Chung, that's a serious accusation. Do you have evidence for the public? I pulled out the encrypted flash drive and held it to the camera. This contains all key evidence. Time-stamped login records of Lu Yuanhang and his team entering my former company's servers. Recordings of him and former marketing director Lin Wei conspiring. Complete drafts of Yuan Guang's 2 sets of financing books. And the money laundering trail through offshore fund Chenxi Capital. All materials have been submitted to regulators. The host paused, glanced at her prompt, and continued. You said this morning in your speech, ruins show 2 paths. Do you believe what happened today is the path you described? I looked at the small red light. That path is for those willing to walk it. I've walked 23 days. Each step on the broken pieces. Some say I should hate. Should make the people who hurt me pay. But the only thing I want to say is, the harder you fall, the more you need to get up. Not to prove anything to anyone else. To remind yourself, the fragments can't take away who you are. The viewership counter on the side of the screen spiked. I glanced at the number. More zeros than I'd expected. The host signed off. The light went dark. The room was quiet. I pulled off the earpiece and pressed my fingers to my temples. Outside, the light was fading. I hadn't rested long before the door knocked. Fang Hui's voice came through. Chengyi, someone's here to see you. She says her name is Lin Wei. She's waiting downstairs. I stood at the door for 5 seconds. Then I went down. Lin Wei stood in a corner of the lobby, against the wall with the blue and white porcelain vase. She'd changed into a plain shirt. Hair down. No makeup. This was only the second time I'd ever seen her without makeup. The first was on our wedding morning, when she'd asked me to get her hairpin and smiled bare-faced. Don't be nervous. I'll call off the wedding. 6 years ago now. Her face was bare and red-eyed. Nose pink. She clutched a small black bag. Its strap twisted around her fingers. I stopped a step away. The lobby server glanced over and left. The wall clock ticked. Chengyi. Her voice was as rough as it had been that afternoon. But more broken. Like a string stretched too far. I watched your interview. I waited. Her tears began to fall. Silent. one after another, tracking down her cheeks. You've lost weight, she said for the third time, her voice catching. You were never like this. You were softer, rounder. Your eyes curved when you smiled. Now you look at people like a knife. I said, nothing. I went to that neighborhood today, she said, her voice dropping, barely audible. I found your lane. I stood outside that hotel and saw your window. A wall outside it. You lived there for 23 days. Every day you delivered food. Every night you came back to a wall. Her shoulders shook. Chungyi, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you let me know where you were? The night we divorced. I said at last, my voice lighter than I expected. You called Lu Yuanhang and said I knew nothing. Did you want me to know where I was then? Did you think about letting me know? She collapsed, hands on the vase stand, her face in her palms, shoulders heaving. Muffled sobs escaped through her fingers. I didn't reach down. I didn't touch her. The clock ticked. From the kitchen, the distant clatter of pots. I looked at the woman crying at my feet, remembering 1,000 mornings. Her head on my shoulder, saying 5 more minutes, remembering Eri Lake. Her laughing face, remembering the steady hand with which she'd signed the divorce papers. The images flickered past like a film on fast forward. Then I crouched down to her level, half an arm's length apart. Across the space of a collapsed past, you came, I said, and I'm here. But that space, the one you're trying to fill, that it's empty because you made it empty. Her sobs paused. She looked up, face streaked, lips trembling. Can you know? I said it for her. That position is gone. Filling it again won't fix anything. Well, you want it, I don't have it anymore. I stood. Chungyi. Her voice stretched long, the end of it cracking. I took 2 steps toward the stairs, then stopped, my back to her. Lin Wei, you're smart, capable. You'll live fine without me. Don't let today's fall drag you down. Then I walked back in the meeting room. Fang Hui stood by the window, a cup of tea in his hand. He didn't turn. Gone. He turned. Looked at my face. Your eyes are red. The wind. I sat on the couch, drained the cold glass of water. The night had fully fallen. City lights began to bloom, turning the sky a deep, bottomless blue. Fang Hui sat across from me. What's next? Morningstar starts operating. Fill Yuanguang's supply chain gap. Execute the first order with Mingtu. After they collapse, there'll be a brief vacuum. We need to fill it before anyone else. Lu Yuanhang. Regulators are already involved. The criminal process will run its course. I won't be involved. Fang Hui nodded. His look had changed from the first time we met in Wangjiang Pavilion. No longer appraising, but something heavier. He patted his knee and stood. All right, rest. The media is waiting for an official response. I pushed them to tomorrow. At the door, he turned back. Chungyi, good work today. The door closed. I sat on the couch, pulled out my phone, reopened that message. Can we meet one more time? I selected it, deleted it. Then I opened the window. The night wind poured in, carrying away the last trace of salt. I stood at the window, looking out at the city, light upon light, stretching to the horizon. 23 days ago, I dragged a suitcase from the edge of this light into the dark of the urban village. 23 days later, I stood before the same city with 3 new business cards, hundreds of unread congratulations, and a self-rebuilt from shards of porcelain. I called Uncle Zhou. He picked up on the first ring. Uncle, you open tomorrow. He coughed. Open. Why not? I'll come for noodles. With beef. With. I heard him laugh before he hung up. Rough. Like sandpaper on wood. I put the phone away, closed the window, and walked out of the room. A warm yellow wall lamp lit the end of the hallway. I walked toward it. The next afternoon, I went back to the urban village. The alley looked the same as the night I dragged my suitcase in. The crepe vendor at her stall, the shirtless man loading beer, the floral shirt barber leaning in his doorway. Only one thing was different. As I passed the crepe stall, the vendor called out, "Hey, no rush today, right?" No rush, she grinned. Extra egg. On me. I'll pay. I slipped a 10 into her apron pocket. She chased me 3 steps, but didn't catch me. Uncle Zhou's noodle shop was half open, the shutter raised, broth bubbling on the stove. I ducked inside. He was at the counter, back to me, chopping scallions. He didn't turn. Sit. Noodles soon. I sat at the old table. The one where I'd first seen the ledger, its surface worn smooth by years of meals. A thin crack along the edge. When he brought the bowl, I counted 6 slices of beef. Double the usual. And a fried egg. Yolk still runny, golden, bleeding into the broth when I broke it with my chopsticks. Uncle, I said, lifting a slice of beef. How's Laosh inside wrapping up? He wiped the stove, not looking up. Lu Yuanhang's accounts are frozen. Yuan Guang is in liquidation. Lin Wei resigned, and is still in Beijing. That in 01 seen her out. Lao Shin says the case file is with the investigation unit. 3 or 4 months until the process closes. Lu Xueming tried to run to Thailand. They caught him at the airport. He dropped his rag, took off his glasses, and wiped them. Xiao Cheng, do you think this is over? I chewed the beef. Swallowed. For me. Yes. For him. No. Uncle Zhou sat across from me. Poured himself tea. He blew on it, his gaze somewhere far away. I handled a case once, he said. An import-export guy? His partner stabbed him in the back. The company folded. His wife left. He won the case later. Got his money back. The guy went to prison. His ex-wife came back. You know what he said to her? What? I can't rebuild the path you walked away from. Keep moving forward. He sipped his tea. He remarried. Runs a small company now. Steady. I heard his daughter got into college last year. He's all gray now. Sent $51 red envelopes in a parent group. People teased him for being cheap, but he didn't care. I ate my noodles. The steam hit my face. Made my eyes water. I took a long sip of the broth. Rich. Warm. With the particular depth of Uncle Zhou's stew, I'd never thought a bowl of noodles could hold so much. But today's bowl held the entire urban village's early mornings and late nights. Uncle Zhou's hunched back under the dim light. The finance book and those sleepless nights. After I finished, Uncle Zhou pulled a brown envelope from under the counter and slid it across. I opened it. A handwritten list of supply chain resources that might be released during Yuan Guang's liquidation, each with contact notes. Your Morningstar needs something to fill the gap, he said, putting his glasses back on. Use these. I was going to give them to you yesterday, but you had a big day. I folded the envelope into my inner pocket and stood to leave. At the door, he called. Xiao Cheng. I turned. You still coming for noodles? He was turning off the stove. Back to me, his voice low. If not, let me know. I won't hold a bowl. I'll come. At least once a week. If you're closed, I'll wait. He waved. Not looking back. Outside, the alley was bathed in sunshine. June in the urban village had a thick, lived-in smell. Dust and smoke from the morning's heat. I looked up at the sky. Clean. Blue. A few clouds edged in gold. My phone buzzed. Chen Mo Mingtu's prepayment cleared. Sun Jiaming says he's waiting for your first official order. Below it, a screenshot from a technical forum. A top post. Yuan Guang collapse. Full recap. The author's handle was unfamiliar, but the data and logic were unmistakably Chen Mo's style. 300 replies already. Climbing. I replied. Start building the tech framework. Source talent from my old team. Some are still jobless. Reach out. He replied. Got it. I put the phone away and walked toward the main road. As I passed the hotel, the owner's wife was sunning herself, cracking seeds. She looked up, startled. You're still here. I thought you checked out. Today. Deposit's non-refundable. I'll need to rekey that lock. I don't need it. She was quiet, then muttered. What's there to thank me for? You paid. I gave you a room. Fair trade. I went upstairs to 302 and packed. The same suitcase, but now with a navy jacket, copies of documents, 2 flash drives, and the dog-eared finance book. I took a final look around. The indentation in the mattress from 23 nights. The charger scuffs by the wall socket. The dust on the windowsill in arcs from the wind. I stood at the window, looking at the moss-covered wall. The moss was deeper green than the day I'd arrived. Rain had soaked it. The water stain on the ceiling, once like a face, had blurred into an irregular dark shape. It didn't look like anything anymore. I carried the suitcase downstairs. The owner's wife was still at the door. She reached under the counter and handed me a plastic bag. The woman in white came by yesterday. She didn't come up. Stood out front. Left this. Inside was a flat, hard box wrapped in brown paper, with a note. No name. No sign-off. Just 2 characters in Lin Wei's handwriting. Yours. I tore the paper. Inside, a wooden frame. Glass spotless. The photo, Erai Lake. White dress. Looking back and laughing. The frame from the old apartment. She'd kept it. Never thrown it away. On the back, a small note in her handwriting. He told me to return what was yours. This should count. I looked at the note for a long time. The wind lifted a corner, then set it back. I rewrapped the frame and placed it at the bottom of the suitcase. Then I zipped it, leaving. Sis, I said. Yeah. She nodded toward the alley. If you ever need anything. Say so. Even if this dump can't offer much. I smiled and wheeled my suitcase out. The wheels rattled over the uneven alley. Past the crepe vendor calling come back tomorrow. Past the barber nodding from his mirror. Past the shirtless beer loader raising his bottle in a half salute. I walked to the main road without looking back. I hailed a cab to the temporary office Fong Huai had arranged. In the back seat, my phone buzzed out a call from Shun Du Chungyi. His voice was crisp. One thing. Liu Yuanhang confessed part of it early this morning. He mentioned Uncle Zhou. Said Zhou did the second set of books. I gripped the phone. Uncle Zhou. Don't worry. Shin Du's voice had a rare hint of amusement. Old Zhou reported it. He'd flagged the whole thing to me the second week Yuan Guang hired him. He was working as an informant. That has been for years. He has backups of everything. Liu Yuanhang can't bite him back. I relaxed. Leaning back, Shun, who is Uncle Zhou, really? 2 seconds of silence. 23 years in the audit bureau. More cases than you can count. After retirement, he opened that noodle shop to monitor a specific unofficial financing channel. This case that he just picked it up along the way. I remembered what he'd said in the shop. I've done honest books and dishonest books. The shadows under the lamplight. The wrinkles I'd mistaken for years of where they'd held a whole career. His shop's still open. Right, still open. He can't sit still. Then I'll ask him for extra beef next time. Shindu chuckled and hung up. The cab took me to an office building on the East 3rd Ring. Fong Huai had rented a temporary space on the 15th floor. Modest, but south-facing, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the CBD. When I pushed open the door, Chen Mo was already there, coding across 3 monitors. On the table, a stack of unopened office supplies. He looked up, his eyes crinkling behind his glasses. Ye, you're here. I've set up the initial framework. Mingtu's data interface is live. Come look. I stood behind him. Lines of code scrolled. Familiar. Comforting. Like stepping into my old office. But the desk was new. The pothose was gone. Outside, a different sky. Chinemo. I said, stop calling me you. He blinked. What then, Chung? I patted his shoulder. Let's be professional. We're a real company now. He grinned and turned back to his screen. I walked to the window. Sunlight poured over the CBD skyline. Far off, a construction crane turned slowly. Farther still, toward the urban village. The view was blocked by buildings, but I knew it was there. The alley, the noodle shop, the moss-covered wall outside 302'd. They were the places my fingers had gripped as I climbed out of the ashes. Every scratch was a signpost. I took out my phone and opened my notes. 23 days of entries. Evidence chains, contacts, timelines, plans and contingencies. I scrolled to the end and added one new line. Morningstar Capital. Day 1. Then I locked the screen, put the phone away, and turned back. Chen Mo was on the phone, animated, discussing a technical detail. Sunlight pooled on the office floor. I walked over, sat down beside him, and opened my laptop. A new day.